Γεια σας και καλώς ήρθατε to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today we're going to be making Kydoni. Kydoni translates to the quince fruit in Greek, and today I'm going to teach you how to preserve it as a sweet. It's so delicious. In Greece, it's known as glika του κουταλιού, which means spoon sweets, because if you stop by anyone's home, they usually have some sort of fruit or vegetable preserved in a sweet syrup, and it's served in a little plate in a spoon with a nice cup of hot Greek coffee. It's so delicious. I'm going to share with you my mom's recipe, which is the easiest way to make this. I've seen so many recipes online and in cookbooks that make it a little more complicated than it needs to be, but I'm going to teach you how to make it easy peasy so that way you can have this on hand all year long. Especially if you know how to can things, or if you have canning supplies, this will literally last a long time in your pantry. Otherwise, it'll stay fresh in the refrigerator for a month or two. Let's get started. So we're going to begin with a pound of quince fruits. Now, you find these in the grocery store. They look almost like a cross between an apple and a pear, but they taste nothing like it. So don't try to bite into it. You have to cook this in some sort of sugar because it's kind of bitter when you bite into it. Make sure to peel them. Now, you can get 3 or 4 depending on the size. So it's a really good idea to have a kitchen scale on hand for this. So that way you weigh them, because as much fruit as you're going to use, that's how much sugar is needed to make these preserves. Peel the fruits and then go ahead and cut them into quarters and carefully take out the seeds and the hard parts in the center. You know, the whole core needs to come out. My friends over at Nakano Knives sent me this beautiful Mito chef's knife, and they also sent a coupon code that you guys can get this on the website for 20% off. They're beautiful knives, high quality, made in Japan. The link is going to be in the description box down below, so you could click on it and head on over and get 20% off anything. But I do highly recommend this knife because it's just so sleek and sharp and just easy to use. Make sure you use the code Dimitra's Dishes at checkout and click on the link down below. I started off using the chef's knife, and then I went to another more pliable knife to take out the core. You can, because I try to save as much of the fruit as possible. I can go cut down the center and get rid of the core, but I'll also be getting rid of some of the fruit, and I want that for my preserve. So once you're done taking out the core, slice each quarter and then cut it into little strips, or they're not cubes, they're basically little strips. This is what they look like. You want to get them all as uniform in size as possible so they cook evenly. And you want to do this quickly because quince fruit does oxidize, which means it turns brown really quickly. So once you chop everything up, put it in your pot, squeeze about 2 to 3 teaspoons of lemon juice in there. Fresh lemon juice is best. Then you want an equal amount of sugar in weight. So if you're using 1 pound of fruit, you need 1 pound of sugar. That was about almost 3 cups of sugar, but don't use the cup measurement. This is the time where you need the kitchen scale. Take it out and use that. A pound is basically 500 grams if you're using gram measurements. Put that in there with 1.5 cups of water, 3 whole cloves, and then you're going to need some geranium leaves. Geranium leaves really do lend the beautiful flavor that's characteristic of this sweet. And if you can't find them, you can use a cinnamon stick instead. It's going to add that fall kind of flavor, but the geranium leaves are best. I got these little plants online. I'll put the link down below where you could find them. They're geranium leaves, and in Greek they're known as barbaroriza. They have a lovely citrusy scent. You could get either a lemon geranium or a rose geranium. Rose geranium was what I found, and it works perfectly. Make sure that you rinse the leaves well so you don't get any dirt in your dessert. Put 3 or 4 leaves in there, and then you're going to want to put this over the heat, over a high heat, and let it come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, then go ahead and reduce the heat to a medium low, and carefully cover the pot, but not all the way, because anytime you're boiling something that has this much sugar in it, it can overflow in the blink of an eye, and it's so hard to clean sugar syrup that's fallen over the stove. You don't want that to happen, so keep an eye on it, and once it has a steady simmer going, you can step away from it. Don't fully cover it, like I said. Let it boil for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then you're going to want to remove the lid so that way the water can evaporate a little bit faster and the syrup can thicken. In that time, the fruit is going to be fully cooked. It's going to be nice and tender. Most recipes online tell you to either grate the fruit, which is too much work, and then I don't like it to be a mushy consistency, or they tell you to boil it first and then do the whole syrup and stuff, that whole process. It's unnecessary. My mom makes it this way, and it just comes out perfectly, makes it so easy. So once you take the lid off, at this time you could also go in and take out the cloves and the geranium leaves and just discard them and let this cook until the syrup thickens for another 15 minutes. The way we test it in Greece, we do the plate test. So you take a little plate and you put it in the freezer for about 15 or 20 minutes until it's nice and cold. And once the sweet is done cooking, you can take a tablespoonful of that and put it in the plate and let it sit for a few minutes, and then you check and see how runny the syrup is. The syrup shouldn't be runny like water, because if that happens, you want to make sure that it cooks a little bit longer. It should be a little bit runny, but also the fruit should hold onto the plate. And if you leave it in there for about 10 minutes, the syrup should be totally thickened. That's how you know it's ready. Once it's done, go ahead and add 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. Mix it all up and set it aside to cool. An optional garnish for this or add-in is blanched toasted almonds. Now, to blanch almonds, you want to either soak them in water overnight, because usually they come with the skins on them. That's going to help the skin release very easily. It's literally just going to pop out. Or when you begin making this, you can pour some boiling hot water over a few almonds and let them sit until the water comes to room temperature, and then you can carefully peel the almonds and put them on a baking tray. If you've soaked them overnight, they'll also separate into halves really easily. You could just do it using your hands. Put them on a baking tray, pat them dry of course, and then bake them in the oven or roast them in the oven for about 7 or 8 minutes, or until they get a little bit of color on them. And then once they're done, you could stir them into the spoon sweet, into the quince preserve. It's just going to add a little bit of crunch and added flavor. Transfer the fruit into your favorite jars. You could put it all in one jar or into several jars. When these fruits are in season, I try to make as many batches of this as I can. I love to give this as gifts. It's so beautiful. A lot of times people haven't tried a quince fruit. It's something really out of the ordinary that you wouldn't really pick up in the supermarket unless you knew what it was. But now that you know what it is, you can make this and give it out as gifts to your friends and family. It's so sweet and delicious and aromatic and perfect to serve to guests or to give as gifts, like we said. And that's it. If you're canning this, you would just follow the directions that go with your canning equipment, and you would boil it and do all the stuff that you do when you can something, and then you can just store it in your pantry at room temperature. Otherwise, just put it in little containers and store it in your fridge. It should stay fresh for about a month or two, but keep an eye on it. These really don't go bad easily unless you double dip, which you shouldn't do. I love this. This is so comforting to me. Reminds me of my mom. Absolutely delicious. You do get the hint of the citrus from the geranium leaves and a little bit of the lemon juice. The clove give it a nice warmth to it. They're perfectly cooked but not mushy and falling apart. You guys are gonna love this one. You can print out the recipe on the website, dimitrasdishes.com. Let me know what you think, and if you have any recipe requests, post them down below and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thank you for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.